Oh, reset work?
Yeah.
I'll use it.
Aaron's here.
Oh,
yeah.
So let's do that. Good job, fellas. Delete that. Slide this over here. And let's get the video going. Wow. Thank you very much, guys. Okay. Thanks, Chaim. So again, today's daf is daf Yudches. We're starting from Yudzayin Amud Beis, about 15 or 20 lines from the bottom of Rav Huna. We're going to be discussing the sugya today of Yesh Zika ve'Ein Zika. I just want to clarify some things at the outset. When we say Yesh Zika and Ein Zika, it's really a misnomer. To say that there is Zika and there isn't Zika is really not true. What Zika means is when the Torah says that a brother who dies leaving over no children, his wife, is not allowed to marry someone else, but must instead either do yibum or chalitza with the widow, right? His widow has to do yibum or chalitza with his surviving brother. The statement of lo siya eshes hameis chutz leish zar, that the woman shall not marry anyone else, creates a bond between her and all of the brothers. We discussed earlier in the Akdama to the Masechta that it's all of the wives have a bond with all of the brothers, and in some way, what ends up happening is that the Gemara said earlier, at least according to one opinion, whoever eventually does the yibum or the chalitza, which completely takes care of everyone, is sort of like acting as the shliach, acting as the agent for each person. So the woman, the co-wife who eventually does the yibum, is acting as a agent for all of the other wives, and the brother who ultimately does the yibum is acting as the agent. But in effect, until the moment comes when the yibum and the chalitza are done, there's a relationship that exists between all of the ladies and all of the men, and that relationship is called Zika. No one argues that relationship exists. The argument of Yesh Zika and Zika could really be better clarified or better stated as, do we say Zika is marriage, or do we say Zika is just Zika? Meaning, do we apply to the bond of Zika rules that we would typically apply to a person who's married? Meaning, and you can understand why there's a place to have the dialogue. Why? Because what are we really saying? What we're really saying is that, let's say, our classic case of Reuven and Shimon brothers. Shimon has a wife. Super simple. Shimon has a wife. We'll call her Rachel. So Shimon dies, and now Rachel falls to Yibum to Reuven. So now, Reuven and Rachel, are they married? Not yet. Technically, once they do Yibum, they'll become married. But are they not married? So that's where the question of Yesh Zika or Ein Zika sort of plays itself in. It's like, on the one hand, he's taking over for the bias of his brother. So who is that? That's her. Who was she to his brother? His wife. So he's sort of stepping into this role of being the new husband. So Masechta Yevamos and this sugya of Yesh Zika, Ein Zika is effectively dealing with or trying to get at the inaccurate sense of what is this intermediary state. This intermediary state we call Zika. Is this just simply the Torah saying halacha? It's a halachic thing. This guy dies, until you do yibum, she can't be with someone else. That's called Zika. It's a new thing. It has nothing to do with marriage. Or no, do we see echoes of it being very similar to like the beginning of a marriage? So the opinion who holds Yesh Zika will say it does have a status of like a marriage, and the ones who say Ein Zika are saying no, it doesn't. It's just its own thing. No one argues it doesn't exist. So the words Yesh and Ein don't really mean, in our context, that there is and isn't Zika. Everyone holds their Zika. The question is, Yesh Zika means Zika is considered like Kiddushin, and Ein Zika means no, Zika is its own thing. Now, we spoke yesterday about a conversation about what Zika might mean, but the classic example of where Zika will become relevant is if we say Yesh Zika, we're going to see that there are Tanoim who argue about this. We're going to see that there are Amoraim that argue about this. Okay, so it's a big discussion. It really could be argued that it is the fundamental question in Yevamos, because once you understand what Zika is and isn't, it helps you understand how everything else ripples off of that. So the opinions will say Yesh Zika. It'll have many ramifications throughout the Masechta, but one major area where it has a nafkamina, ramification, is if we say Yesh Zika, then that means the moment Shimon dies, his surviving wife, and let's say his brother Reuven, are viewed like a married couple. And it could be, if you hold Yesh Zika, and it could be there are different explanations of this, but fundamentally it means that just like a married woman might have isurim that come with her, like for instance, she's an Eshes Ish, a normal married woman is an Eshes Ish. So maybe that's the understanding of why when the Torah says the woman can't be with any other man until you do Yibam, it mirrors the concept of an Eshes Ish. That's really where sort of this idea comes from. So if that's the case, then there might be other areas, other consequences that we might also apply to her. One example might be the example we brought up yesterday, which will come up in today's daf, is let's say in our case, Reuven, despite the fact that Shimon died and he's supposed to do Yibam with Rachel, he says, I don't like Rachel. I like her sister Leah. Let me go marry Leah. So he's not allowed to, according to the opinion who holds Yesh Zika. Why? Because who is Rachel to him? Like a quasi-wife. Well, you're not allowed to marry your wife's sister. So if you can't marry your wife's sister, you can't marry your Zkuka's sister, because a Zkuka is like a wife. A Zika is like a wife. So much so that if, let's say, he went ahead and broke the law according to the opinions that say Yesh Zika, and he goes and marries Leah, and now Leah is his full wife, because again, the Kedushin will take, because it's not like a Kares relationship, it's just a simple, at best, an Issa Derabanan. So of course he's now married to Leah. Well, guess what? He can retroactively now make it, well, not retroactively, really. The moment he marries Leah, who's Rachel to him? Rachel is his actual wife's sister. So again, Rachel fell to him in Yibum, but he went ahead and jumped the gun. Instead of doing Yibum, went ahead and married Leah, her sister. Well, guess what? Now Rachel can't do Yibum with him. So not only can she not do Yibum, she can't do Chalitza. They're done completely. There's nothing left. The Zika bond is gone. So now
with the other wives.
Exactly right. Now let's say Shimon died with Rachel and 2 or 3 other co-wives. Well, once Rachel becomes an erva, and she's becoming an erva because again Reuven's gone ahead and married Leah, Rachel's sister. Well, now Rachel's an erva, and all of the other ladies are Otzaras erva, and so they're all pater. So again, on the one hand, it is like a marriage, and so there, at least according to this, the opinion of Yesh Zika. And yet, at the same time, if let's say Rachel was his real wife, it would not have been possible to marry Leah, her sister, right? That would have been a karet. So obviously, we're only mirroring it to some extent. There are limitations to what the rabbis can do because it's only an Issa D'Rabbanan. That's just one small example that will come up. Another example that's going to come up on today's daf, and we'll diagram all of these. I just want to sort of lay out just from the outset is, well, what happens if, same case, Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and Shimon has a wife, Rachel. Shimon dies. Okay, now Rachel is alive, falling to Reuven and Yibam. Reuven, instead of a sister, wants to marry the mother. So really, it shouldn't be any different. It's also to do, but if you did, it should take. What happens if Rachel dies? Rachel is the only Yevama, and she dies. So do we say that they're married, and now his wife, and I'm putting that in quotes because it's not a real wife, it's this Zika wife, she dies. Do we treat Rachel's mother the same way we would have treated a guy's wife's mother? Meaning a man's married, a regular guy, David. David's married to a lady, the lady dies. Is David allowed to marry his former mother-in-law? Of course not. His mother-in-law is also with him for the rest of his life. Whether his wife is living or his wife is dying, whether he divorced or it doesn't make a difference, that erva is an erva oilam. We'll get to that in a little bit later in the Masechta. Once an erva, except for your wife's sister, it's the only one that's the exception. All other arayos, once usher, always usher, right? So do we say that when your marriage is just this Zika type of marriage that the mother's always usher? So again, that will be another example. If you say yesh Zika, meaning if you say Zika is like marriage, then, well, if marriage means that you're quasi-married, well, then her mother is usher to you. Whereas if you say that ain't Zika, that you're not married, so then the mother is just the mother of a lady who you have no connection to, right? Meaning it's just that there's a mitzvah yibum. She died. There's no more yibum. There's no more yibum. There's no more Zika. You can go ahead and
by the way, if a Kohen did chalitza, and what you're saying, then, and she was never married, could he marry her afterwards?
If a Kohen did chalitza,
she was never married. She was never married. The woman was a virgin. The girl was a virgin.
Yeah.
But he did chalitza. The Kohen has his brother's wife passed away.
Uh-huh.
But he can't marry Grusha Kohen, right?
Correct. But he also can't marry a chalutza.
Oh, he can't marry a chalutza.
Yeah. So your question, I love this, is good, but in practice, not. Yeah, I understand what you were trying to get at, though. Yeah. Okay, so that's the question of Yesh Zika and Ain't Zika. Go ahead.
You said he can marry the sister's wife, right? So let's say
a regular person, right? So it's in general, a random guy is married, his wife dies.
Okay, so let's say in that scenario where you said that he doesn't like his
Zika.
Yeah.
But he likes her sister, so he does chalitza with the zukaka.
That's one way to do it.
Is it okay to marry the sister then?
It's a very good question. Am I allowed to marry my achos kukaso? Or better yet, your achos chlutzaso. So that's also a question. No,
Was it away?
and that but that's going to even be true according to the opinions who hold Ein Zika. Meaning, once you do
really?
chalitza with someone, right? Once you do chalitza with someone, it's like
They're erba?
you're establishing that the connection. Meaning, even though chalitza severs the Zika bond, but there's a separate Issa Derabanan, not Min HaTorah, separate Issa Derabanan. Once you do chalitza with someone, let's say the karov of that chalutza is considered a problem. But again, it's only Min Derabanan.
He said you can only marry your sister if she died.
Right.
Then she's still
I mean, if
alive.
you do chalitza, so then now you could ask a better question.
She was dead.
What about my wife's? What about my? What if I did chalitza, and then she dies? Or what if she doesn't? What if the Yevama dies? Can I be with her sister? If I hold yesh zika, I can't be with her mother because mothers are forever. But I could be with her sister because if she was my actual wife and she died, I could be with her sister. Right? So certainly the Yibam relationship is not going to be worse.
Death knocks out if you're in the middle.
Specifically for the sister.
Chalitza Yibam, say knocks it out. Someone if they die.
Oh, so we're going to discuss that today. Obviously, you can't do Yibam with a dead
someone's
person,
dead person, right?
So the question then becomes, okay, so this is already jumping the gun, but it's good. It's good to talk about. It means we're thinking about the right things. So if a man has so again, classic case, Reuven and Shimon dies, leaves over Rachel to Reuven. Now, we'll make it a little bit easier for this case. Let's say there's three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Let's leave Levi on the side. We're going to use them in a minute. So Reuven and Shimon. You want me to put the diagram, but patience.
I'm saying put him on the side.
Yeah, Levi's on the side. Reuven and Shimon. Shimon dies, leaves Rachel over to Reuven. Now, technically speaking, Levi and Reuven both have a din yibum, and both have a din chalitza. Either one of them could do it. What happens if so Shimon dies, and now Levi does yibum with Rachel?
Good.
Do we say that Reuven cannot be with Rachel's mom now? I mean, if you hold Yesh Zika, and their Zika relationship was once there, so is that not like my wife? And didn't we say before that my wife's
because you can't have two people married to the same wife. So if the Zika is established on Levi, it can't
very
be
good.
established
Okay,
on Reuven.
very good, very good. So said in other words, what he just said, which is very true, said in other words, is that the only time the Zika bond, the Zika relationship will be considered like a marriage is if it hasn't been removed by the tools that remove that type of marriage, which can only be done by Yibam and Chalitza. When the Torah says you have a Zika bond, if you do Yibam and Chalitza, the Zika bond ends. That's exactly the point. Meaning he's explaining a little bit more the lumdus behind it, but effectively, what are you doing when you do Yibam? Really, the question is a little bit better asked by Chalitza. Well, what happens if instead of doing Yibam, Levi does not do Yibam, he does Chalitza? Let's say Levi does Chalitza, right? Because if he does Yibam, you're right. Now they're married, and so I can't be married to the same woman that he's married
Even
to.
if he does chalitza, once he does chalitza, the Zika was on him. Zika can't be on both.
So it's a more subtle point, but yes, that's exactly the point I'm trying to drive at, which is once Levi, in this classic example we just did, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Shimon dies, and Reuven and Levi have a responsibility with Rachel, and Levi goes ahead and does chalitza, we're going to say that even the opinion who holds Yesh Zika will say that Reuven is allowed to marry Rachel's mother. Why? Because even though before Yibam or Chalitza were done, we viewed her as his wife, the moment Yibam or Chalitza is done, the Zika is uprooted. It's gone. It's like it never existed to him, right? Because what is she now? Meaning, what happens if, let's say, Levi has a child with Rachel, right? And now he dies. Can Reuven marry Rachel? Of course not. Why? Eish Ach. I was going to talk about, right? Like Eish Ach. What are you going to say? Well, but from Shimon, I'm allowed to marry. No, that was gone. The moment Levi did Yibam or Chalitza, that Zika ended. She's now just an Eish Ach that you no longer have a mitzvah with, right? So there's nothing to talk about there, right? So when we're talking now about Rachel's mother, who is Rachel to you after Levi does Yibam or Chalitza? Nobody.
Nothing.
She's just your old Eish Ach. You're allowed to marry the mother of your Eish Ach. You're allowed to marry your brother's wife's mom. No problem there. So no problem. So it's only while she's either a Zika. Now, what happened? This is to get to Chaim David's question. What I just described is Levi doing Yibam or Chalitza. What happens if instead of Levi doing Yibam or Chalitza, Rachel dies? That's the case of what we're going to get to today. So Rachel dying, is that the equivalent of uprooting the Zika? Because there's no more, or is that dying as a woman who was married to me?
Right.
So that Reb Aaron Kotler makes that distinction. Reb Aaron Kotler, in explaining this distinction, says that is why this question is a yesh zika, ein zika question of when the Rachel dies, what's the deal with her mother? Do we view Rachel dying as the equivalent of having yibun or chalitza done, or no? Rachel dying is like Rachel, like throwing a monkey wrench into a normal situation. She died as a skuka. She died as a zika. That means she died as a wife. What would be the halacha if chas v'shalom someone's wife died? His mother would be usher to him. So too, if you hold yesh zika, the mother of the zika is usher to him.
In that case, the mother should be usher only to Reuben.
Not
If
to the
the
brother.
mother,
Why?
The Zika was for everybody, but Levi also.
What's that?
Reuben's the older one, so the responsibility falls on him.
Okay, so that's a
Maybe
different
wants-
discussion about
Maybe
whose
he wants to
responsibility.
jump in, he could jump in.
All right,
Okay, so
Right.
you're bringing up a good question, but that isn't a question for our Gemara. You are correct.
So now
that there-
that she died, Zika should only remain on Reuben. It can't remain on two people at the same time.
That's an interesting point. I don't have a good answer to that. It's a conversation about how we view the older brother's responsibility. Is the Torah saying, like, he must do it first, and it's just that the other brothers can, if they want to jump the gun, jump
right,
in?
Right.
Or is it really that the Torah said everyone has an equal responsibility?
That's what we learned. They all have equal
They do have an
responsibility.
equal responsibility in terms of a zika. The question is, the Torah does say, whatever it is, whatever the lashon of the pasuk is, to say that it's the older brother.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to just sort of touch on these ideas before we even open the Gemara, so that when we get into the cases in the Gemara now, it'll be familiar, and I'm not going to have to stop and chop you up the words over here. We're holding of Omer Rav Huna. We're going to see today two opinions. Hopefully, there's the opinion of Rav Huna and there's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to see Rav Huna holds. He's going to say ein zika, meaning to say, in the case of Rachel's mother, he's going to say you're allowed to marry Rachel's mother after Rachel dies. And then Rabbi Yehuda is going to say, no, if Rachel dies, the mother is going to be a problem. Why? Because he holds yesh zika. Okay. No, I just want to clarify. The reason why their conversation is talking about after Rachel dies is because if Rachel's alive and there's a zika bond, everyone's going to agree that you can't marry Rachel's mother. Why? We'll see. They'll introduce just one more idea, which is that everyone's going to seem to agree we're not allowed to, lechatchila at least, you're not allowed to do an act that will cause yibum to not be possible.
Right.
So if I marry the mother, well, now I can't do yibum with the daughter, obviously, because if I'm married to the mom, then all of a sudden the daughter is my wife's daughter. That's a problem. So just like if Reuven jumped the gun and married Leah, shouldn't have, but if he did, so what's the halacha now? The halacha is he can't do yibum with Rachel anymore. It's a sister. It's her sister. So again, that's a separate thing called bittul yibum. Bittul yibum is a separate issue. So everyone's going to agree, it seems, generally, everyone's going to agree that you're not supposed to do something to me about yibum. Yibum is a very important thing. We will see an opinion later on who holds it's okay.
Obviously, chayav. It's just a law.
It's not even maybe a law. It could be a sinister.
Doesn't chal anyway, right? The
No,
Kedusha chal or not?
the kedushin with the mother would be chal.
It would?
Yeah, because it's not a kares, it's only the rabbanon. It would work. But once you're married to the mother, now you can't marry. Now the yibum's done.
And it could be a challah.
Well, not sure. Good question.
But he's allowed. He's not. Is he allowed or not allowed?
Not allowed. But
That's-
asamid the
What are
rabbanon
you saying? It's
to marry
chal,
the
though.
mother, but if he
Chal.
marries her, it's chal. Yeah.
Or to marry anyone, because isn't he supposed
No,
to?
he's allowed to have more than wives. Not have more than one.
Right, but is it when the yibum falls upon, when there's that zika bond
She
first,
can't marry
doesn't he
him.
need to? Oh, so it's more. Okay, so he could do what he wants.
Yeah, he's gonna have
It's
40
like the
wives.
get. It's like
Shlomo
the
Melech.
get. It's like
Yeah.
the get situation, right? He doesn't have to give it, but she
She
gonna
can't get married
ride.
until she gets the get. He can go ahead
You
and
can do it. You can wait.
he can do a Shlomo Melech and have 1,000 wives. So.
Right.
Okay, so let's see it inside. Amar Rav Huna. As you guys see where the words are in the Gemara, Rabbi, you good? Amar Rav Huna.
How many lines up?
No,
If I counted it, I would say it's about 17.
17B3.
Oh, it's B3. Okay, got it.
that's all right.
Okay. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, Shemeres Yavam Shemesa. So this is our case. Reuven and Shimon, right? Shimon dies, leaves over Rachel. Reuven is mutter be'ima. We'll call the mother Dina, just for the sake of continuity. Yeah, Dina is the mother. Reuven is allowed to marry Dina. Alma Kisaver Ein Zika. You see clearly he holds that the relationship between Reuven and Rachel is not a marriage relationship. It's just a regular Zika relationship. And therefore the mother is not the mother of my wife. It's the mother of the woman who I'm supposed to do Yibum with. Well, guess what? The woman I'm supposed to do Yibum with is no longer around. She's dead. I got no more mitzvah Yibum. I got no more Zika. There's nothing to talk about. There's no issues here. So even that Zika relationship that once existed did not manufacture like an ishus between me and her, and therefore the mother is no longer going to be a problem. Says the Gemara, why did he say it this way? Why did he say it, express the halacha as a case like this? Why not just simply say, V'lema halacha kedivrei ha'omer ein Zika? Why not just simply say the halacha is like the opinion of old ein Zika? Meaning to say, the Gemara is referencing the fact that there's a machlekes tanoim. There's an opinion of Rav Yehuda ben Beseira later on. There's an opinion of Rav Yehuda ben Beseira later on, which I'm not going to go through in detail, although it's good to know. It's a Gemara later on in Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. It's basically talking about the case I mentioned before about Reuven jumping the gun and marrying Leah. If he marries Leah, let's say he only, I just said I'm not going to do it, but you know what, I'm going to do it. Reuven said, so what is it? We have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon is married to Rachel, right? Shimon's always the one who's dying, right? So now, Shimon dies. Rachel falls to Reuven and Levi. Let's say Reuven says, you know what? I like Leah. So he goes and gives her kesef kiddushin. And now they're married. So now Reuven is married to Leah, and yet he has a mitzvah yibum with Rachel.
Who's Leah?
Leah is the Rachel's sister.
Oh, okay.
Rachel and Leah, whenever we bring them up, we'll always refer to them as sisters. Yeah, Rachel and Leah. So now all of a sudden, Reuven has put himself in a bind. He shouldn't have, maybe should have, whatever. He went ahead and married Rachel's sister. And they're married 100%, min haTorah, kiddushin. But he hasn't finished the whole Maisa of marrying. He did kiddushin, and he didn't do nisuin, meaning he made kesef kiddushin. Normally 12 months later, with Leah. And 12 months later, he was going to take her into his home. So says Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira later on in the Mishnah, hold off on doing the knisa. Don't bring her into your home yet. Meaning, don't go have sex with her. Why? Because right now, who is she to you? She's the sister of your Yevamos. Now, that's only a problem if you hold the Yesh Zika. If your Yevamos is not considered like your wife, then go ahead and finish the marriage off, no problem. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira later on in the Mishnah says, you have to hold off. Wait till Levi does Yibum or Chalitza to take care of the Zika, and now go ahead and finish off your marriage. He says, wait. Later on, we'll see in the Gemara today, Shmuel paskins like him, and Shmuel says, Halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. The Gemara implies from there later on that must mean that there's a Tana who argues, because why would Shmuel come say the Halacha is like Joe if there's only Joe? Obviously, it must be there's someone else that he's saying the Halacha is not like. That means there's a machlokas Tanaim, whether we say Yesh Zika or Ein Zika. Okay?
But if it's Yesh Zika, even if he does Chalitza, that's still a problem.
Nope. No. Only with Levi. Levi did the Chalitza. Reuven didn't do anything. Remember, you're bringing up the fact that after you do Chalitza, you have a problem with her, Reuven, but that would only be for Levi.
Oh,
right? Reuven didn't do the Chalitza. So Reuven would now be left to go finish off his marriage with with Leah, because Rachel is no longer a Zika to him, because Levi took care of it by doing Chalitza or you. That.
So does the question is, if you say that you have
I'm going to determine whether the question is okay.
Okay, if there are several brothers and you say you have Zika by all of them, so why does Chalitza help for all of them?
Good question. We're not discussing it now. It's a bigger conversation. Let's assume for now that Chalitza knocks it all off.
Okay.
The Gemara said, the short answer, the Gemara said earlier, the person who does Yibum or Chalitza is acting as a shliach for all the brothers, and the woman who takes the Chalitza or does the Yibum is acting as a shliach for all the other wives. Don't ask a follow up, but that's okay. I mean, you can ask. That's the short answer, which is all we're going to cover now. But this is a perfect example of what we discussed. Yeah. Okay. So now, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, that in that case, when Reuven goes and makes kedushin with Leah, he should hold off on finishing it. He should wait till Rachel either, passes away, gets taken care of by Levi, whatever it is, should hold off. There's another Tana who holds, no, go ahead, finish it off. Why? Because that opinion is going to say, Ein Zika. We don't view Reuven and Rachel as anything other than Zika. Zika is the new thing, but it's not marriage. It's just a responsibility you have. She can't do anything until she gets a Yibum or Chalitza from you or Levi. But you can go do what you want. In fact, it could be according to the opinion who holds Ein Zika. There's nothing wrong with him marrying Leah to begin with. Why shouldn't he be allowed to marry Leah? Right? You understand that? Because again, if you hold that there's no marriage bond, it's just a Zika bond, then what's wrong with marrying Leah? The only issue would be if he's the only of them. What's that? Well, if he marries Leah, then Rachel goes free. If he's the only brother, Levi's the other brother, so she still has a Zika to him. So that could be a halacha. There could be, there's an opinion that holds that if he's the only of them, then he's not allowed to marry Leah. Because by doing that, he's mevatel the whole mitzvah yibum. In that situation, bittul yibum is a problem. But okay, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. So the Gemara seems to be asking, there's an opinion who holds yesh zika, and there's an opinion clearly who holds ein zika. So why, when Rabbi Yehuda, who's an Amoira, why did he say this halacha as if he's being mechadash? He's like, let me teach you this novel new idea. He tells me an idea which is entirely predicated on the idea of ein zika. Why not just say halacha ka'omer ein zika? It's already, he's sticking it. What did we say? What was the lashon of the Gemara earlier before when they asked Rabbi Yeshua about the machlokes b'shav v'yisrael? What are you asking me? I'm sticking my head in between two mountains over here. We're talking about an Amoira. Why is he stating his halacha in a way that it sounds like he's telling us a new thing when really all he has to do is tell us that other opinion? I picked the side not like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. So the Gemara answers. So the Gemara says like this. Had he just simply said that the halacha is like the opinion who says ein zika, what's that case that I just mentioned, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira? How many brothers are there? There's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. There's two brothers, right? Total of 3 brothers, correct? Right? When you have 3 brothers, how connected are you to Rachel? Well, you could argue that maybe it's sort of split between Reuven and Levi. So maybe that's not called as, right? Maybe it's not called a zika when it's 2. So I might, if all I would have said is that the halacha is like the opinion over there who says ain't zika, maybe dafka when there's 2 brothers, an additional, 3 brothers, right? Because I can always say it's not really my zika, it's Levi zika. There's a splitting up of that connection. So maybe zika is not, it would not be said there. But what if it's just Reuven and Shimon? Maybe when it's just Reuven and Shimon, and I'm the only one who could do the yibum, now I'm considered really like, now I'm the one who has to do it. Maybe that zika bond is stronger, and maybe there you can hold yesh zika. So therefore, I specifically stated my halacha as an example of Reuven and Shimon dying, and then Reuven being allowed to marry Shimon's widow's mother, because it's just Reuven and Shimon. In this case, Reuven is the only one to possibly do zika. So therefore, for me to say this halacha here that he's allowed to marry the mother, it's expressing that I'll say my halacha of ein zika even in a case where there's only just me and Reuven and Shimon, correct? So therefore, says the Gemara, that would only be true in that case later on Daf Memalaf when there's trey here means 2 additional brothers, two additional brothers. Aval bechad, but if there's only 1 brother of the only 1 yavam, yesh zika. Maybe one could think I hold yesh zika. So therefore, I said it the way I said it. Says the Gemara, so why not just say simply, I paskin like the shita there who holds ein zika, and I say that his halacha applies even in a case of 1. Says the Gemara, if I would have said that statement, so instead of giving an example, but I would have just referenced the later case, again, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon dies, and Rachel falls to Reuven and Levi. Reuven jumps the gun, marries Leah, the sister. We say, hold off on marrying because of yesh zika, but there's another opinion who holds ein zika. So why didn't Rav Yehuda just simply say the halacha is like that Tana, even in a case where it's just Reuven and Shimon, right? Meaning to say, not that case, but in my case. Why did he have to say? Why did he have to give an example? Gemara says, if you would have that case there, that case does not include death. So you might say that over there, once I marry Leah and Rachel are sisters, and so therefore Kol's man, Rachel's alive, right? I married to Leah, her sister, they're both alive. Now the halacha is I shouldn't go ahead and I'm allowed to go ahead and according to the opinion of old ein zika, I'd be allowed to finish the marriage off because my relationship with Rachel is not like a marriage bond. But that's only true when Rachel's alive. What happens if Rachel's dead? Maybe now you'll say that the halacha is I'm sorry, let me just say that again. You might even think if Rachel's alive that the halacha is I'm allowed to be with the mother. Right? Now, why would you think that? Because the case over there of Ein Zika is talking about a case where Rachel is still alive. My case is, this is speaking of Yehuda's voice, my case is where Rachel dies, meaning to say he's limiting his halacha. When I say Ein Zika, I say Ein Zika only in the sense that once Rachel dies, I can't be with the mother. But if the mother's alive, if Rachel's alive, then who's the mother to me? Nothing to do with Zika or Ein Zika, but because of Bittul Yibum, right? I'm not allowed to marry the mother, because if I do that, now all of a sudden Rachel does. Yeah, once I'm married to the mother, then who's Rachel to me? She's my wife's daughter. My wife's daughter is a problem. That's an erva. So therefore, you might think that I'll say that halacha even when Rachel's alive. That I'm saying you're allowed to marry the mother. Then Kamash Malan la'achar misa in mechaim lo. And why? The Gemara speaks it out. Mishum de'aser levatel mitzvahs yivam, and you're not allowed to do an act that's going to cause you to be mevatel yibum. Again, by marrying the mom, the daughter becomes usher to me as my wife's daughter. That's bas
not
ishtoi.
worrying about the Zika part. It's worrying
Yeah,
about
this
the
has nothing to
right,
do.
right,
He's pointing out, I hold Ein Zika.
Right.
Especially as Ein Zika. Yeah. So says the Gemara, Tanan, I have a Mishnah. This Mishnah, we're going to see that maybe this Mishnah might be a question on the opinion of Rav Yehuda. Let's remember, the opinion of Rav Yehuda is Ein Zika. Let's see. Tanan says in the Mishnah, now the assumption here, this is a Stam Mishnah. We'll see, and meaning to say that the halacha is like it, because why can't he? Rav Yehuda was the one who had said this halacha at the start. Sorry, Rav Huna. Sorry, my bad. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Rav Huna is the one who holds it. Correct. Tanan, there's a Mishnah, it's a Stam Mishnah. We assume it's the halacha, which is the reason why we assume it's a question on Rav Huna, because otherwise he could just simply say it's the other Tana who holds Zika, and I hold like the Tana who holds Ein Zika. So clearly what we're saying here is I'm bringing from a Stam Mishnah because generally the Stam Mishnah is the halacha. It says, Yevimtei Shemesa. This is a case, it's later on Mamtes. It says, let's say you have a case, again, Reuven and Shimon, classic case, Shimon's married to Rachel, right? Shimon dies, and now Rachel falls to Reuven. Let's say Yevimtei Shemesa. Rachel now dies. Mutter ba'achoisa. It says later on in the Mishnah, he's allowed to marry Leah. Now,
So that's holding.
so ba'achosa in, what do you see? It's saying that I'm allowed to marry the sister.
Right.
Be'ima lo. But mashma that it's only the sister. Why specifically say achosa? Why not say all of the krevim? It's specified sister. Can I not make a diak that the implication is that once Rachel dies, I can marry the mom? Sorry, I can marry the sister. I can't marry any of the other relatives. Meaning again, and it makes sense. Why would her sister be okay? Because if it's modeled after Achos Ishto, my wife's sister, well, my wife's sister is also mutter to me once the wife dies. So maybe only she's mutter, but maybe every one of the other relatives, which are forever type of ervas,
Right,
that's going to always be answered.
right,
The other 14, whatever it is, or
Yep.
even maybe the other 6.
Why, meaning you're reading into it. You're saying, says Bach, so you're giving me a stam halacha, and then he says, oh, it must be, doesn't mention any other.
Why would it say achosa? I mean, the Gemara is about to say why.
That's the case.
The
The case is achosa. So why are you going to tell me that
It's not
it's not
the case. Yevimto shemesa.
Yeah.
A person's Yevama dies. So Rachel
She's
dies.
not dead.
Mutter, what's the chiddush? Mutter ba'achosa meaning.
No, I'm wrong. I retract.
Okay,
Fine.
good. I mean, the Gemara is going to answer fundamentally why it's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So mutter ba'achosa, the Gemara wants to say there's a diak. What do you see? You see the sister's allowed, but the mother's not. So that means
Why is the sister allowed?
So would normally be allowed.
Why?
well, if you're married to a woman, well, not you. If a person's married to a woman, are you allowed to marry her? Is he allowed to marry her his wife's sister? No. What if his wife dies? Are you allowed to marry his wife's sister?
No.
Yes.
It's the only
So
one.
one
we say.
case
It's the
that's
only
the
one.
exception.
We talked about before because the wife would want that to happen.
I mean, you could add that. You could say that if you like, but
Why?
even if she didn't, even if she says, if my dead body, if you marry my sister
right,
after, it doesn't matter. We ignore her.
The Torah, there's a
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Achos Isha is the only one.
Yes,
It
the
says
only one.
Bechayeha. It says
You say
the
that.
Isser is only while she's alive.
Where is it?
It's in Parshas Achremos, Parak Yitches. Same
Okay,
parsha that
all
we
right,
talking about. Okay, so what do we see? We see over here, sister's mutter, mother's not. This is blatantly not like Rav Huna. Rav Huna said that Rachel dies, the mother Dina's mutter. Now we're saying Rachel dies, mother Dina's usser, because the only one who's mutter is Leah, the sister. Where says lo? Not true. I'm sorry. Who adin da'afilu be'ima? He's allowed to marry Dina in that case. So then why did the
Ain't Zika then.
why are you telling me only about achosa? Like you asked, I did the Tanaresha, Ishta Shemesa Mutter Ba'chaisa, Ba'chaisa Erav Bimalai, the Havila Issa Deraisa, Tananami Sefer Mutter Ba'chaisa. Meaning to say, long answer to say, basically very simple. The Mishnah over there, have some context. The Mishnah is talking about a case where the Chiddush in the Reisha is talking about the halacha of what we just discussed. If you're married to a woman and she dies, you're allowed to marry your sister. You're not allowed to marry her mother. You're not allowed to marry anyone else. So over there, the diak is a good diak. Because when you're actually married and your wife dies, then yes, her sister is the only one who's mutter to you because she's the one exception. Every one of the other 21 krovim are completely usher. But this seifa of that was the Reisha. The seifa of that Mishnah is just contrasting that halacha. Well, what happens if it's just a Zika situation? There, it's just being consistent. So in the seifa, there's no diak. Even though the words themselves, one could say, oh, why'd you choose sister? It was just maintaining consistency. It was trying to prove that there's a difference between marriage and Zika. That in marriage, your sister's going to be mutter, all of the other women are going to be usher, but in Zika, your sister's going to be mutter, and then certainly all of the other ladies also are going to be mutter. But really, there's no diak in the seifa, and la'olam, it's consistent with Rav Huna's halacha. of Ein Zika that you're allowed to marry the mother if Rachel
It's
dies.
coming on the Zika part, not on the other part.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Now, Rav Yehuda Amar, he holds a different halacha. Rav Yehuda Amar, Shemeres Yom Shemeisa Osir Be'ima, the opposite of Rav Huna. He says, Rachel dies, Dina, the mother, don't matter. Osir. Why? All because of her Yesh Zika. Because he holds the opposite. He holds that once Shimon, your brother, dies, Rachel is like your quasi-wife. Well, your quasi-wife is like your regular wife. Your regular wife's mom is always usher to you, so to your quasi-wife's mother is always usher to you. Yeah? Again, with those same distinctions we mentioned earlier, that obviously if Levi, let's say, jumped the gun and did Yibam or Chalitza ends the Zika, now all of a sudden everyone's going to agree that the mother is going to be mutter because it's like you were never married to her. The Zika relationship goes away. Right? We're just specifically talking about if Rachel dies, like we were saying earlier, then Rachel is dying as a married woman, so to speak. So then the halacha is going to be that you can't be with the mother. That's the opinion of Rav Yehuda. So Rav Yehuda holds Yesh Zika. Now the Gemara is going to go through a very similar dialogue that we had with the Ravuna. V'lema halacha kedivrei ha'omer Yesh Zika. Why did you specify it as a case and giving an example? Why not just simply reference the halacha later on of when Reuven and Shimon are brothers and Reuven jumps the gun and marries Leah, the sister of Rachel? Now he's got a problem because he's not supposed to finish off the marriage. He's got to wait for Rachel to get done, get the Yibum done by Levi. Are we good or no?
No, just
Too fast?
My head just.
Okay. The case later where Reuven, Shimon, Levi are brothers. It's okay. Shake it. Turn yourself over. I'll hang you by
You
your
know
feet.
what bothered me? That I came up with a klutz kasha. I think we discussed a little bit before. But how could it ever be Yesh Zika? Because a man, you can't, multiple brothers can't marry one, one woman.
It's not a klutz kasha. You're asking a very good question. Meaning,
Sure.
you're asking a good question. You're asking, how could it be if like Reuven and Levi and Yehuda, they all have a Zika bond with one woman? How could more than one man be married to one woman?
So then you can't. So
It's a very good
automatically it's not.
Right. So obviously, Yesh Zika does not mean it's a din derabanan. We're clearly not saying that halachically maker hadin they're married. We're treating each and every one of them as if they were married for that sake. Meaning
You open it up.
it's not a klutz
You
question.
can't because
Cut
you
it?
can't.
No.
How? Because they would all be married. Even
Yeah.
if you can't marry
Correct.
one woman.
No, correct. Yeah. No, you're bringing up a good point, and the answer is that since it's midirabanan, all of the brothers and all of the co-wives have this relationship midirabanan. But enochanami. That's why when the Yibam and Chalitza happen, it's removed. It's gone. Like the Zika goes away, and then there's no longer an effect.
There's an opinion that it doesn't go away though.
There's one later opinion. There's one later opinion who will see that they hold. Rabbi Gamliel maybe. Okay. So the Gemara is like this. According to Rav Yehuda, who holds Yesh Zika, it was a very good question, by the way. It was a very good question. Yeah. Yesh Zika. So the Yesh Zika means that this quasi-marriage bond exists, in which case then the mother's usher. Why did you have to say it that way? Why not just say that the halacha is like the opinion who says that Reuven should hold off on finishing the marriage to Leah, which would effectively be the opinion of Yesh Zika. Had he said that, meaning he does the opposite. I might think that the opinion is only true of Yesh Zika. I might think, if all I would have done is said that the halacha is like the opinion who holds Yesh Zika, I might think that you only say Yesh Zika when it's just Reuven and Shimon. But when it's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, maybe it's Ein Zika. Because when there's more brothers, the Zika, try to think it on a very simple level, it's like the Zika dissipates a little bit. It's like we're sharing the Zika. So it's not only me, a little bit like your question to a certain extent. It's a little bit speaking out the idea that, well, it's not really my wife, it's our collective wife. It's his wife, it's my wife, but it dissipates a little bit.
I don't hear that.
Well,
Because if you say that Zika is a bond that any one of them could do it, so then Zika would be the same force for each brother, no matter how many brothers there would be.
so you're like the other opinion. Mazel tov. That's what I'm saying. No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
The question comes down to how to understand what Zika is. It's a lumdish question. Not for now.
Yeah.
Says the Gemara. So I might think, says Rav Yehuda, had it only said that the halach is Yesh Zika Hani Mila Bechadav will betray, but if you have three brothers, two extra brothers, Ein Zika, maybe the fact that it's not like I'm considered married to her, because maybe like Kalman said, you can't be married to two men can't be married to the same woman. So in a certain sense, the only time there's Zika is when there's one brother. You're saying massive good stuff here, Kalman. You're not a klutz kasha. It's bomb kasha. Bomb kasha.
Bomb kashas.
A bumba kasha in the yeshiva. We say bumba kasha.
Yeah.
Bumba kasha. Tell it to your son. There's no way they say that in Israel. Bumba. That's a Lakewood term. That's a bomba kasha. Yeah, bomba. It's not. That's like a nuclear bomb. Yeah, bomba kasha. Yeah. So says the Gemara. Therefore, he said I had to give the case the way I gave. One second. The case of the machlekes of Yesh Zika and Zika Batanoim is by three brothers. So saying ain't right. So if you hold the haki pligi betray pligi, their machlekes later on is betray. So if he would have said that the halacha is Yesh Zika betray, kol shekain bechad, right? So what do you mean? Had I said the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira of Yesh Zika, I wouldn't have known to by two. That case is by two. Gemara says no. Ela I amar hachi. Had I said that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, havya amina mechayim. He didn't mean the tray and the chad. He meant mechayim. I might have thought that over there the halacha is mechayim.
How you would do
One second. Balachar misa paka le zika. Kamash malan the zika bechadi le paka. Let me just explain. Had I said that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira yesh zika, I would have. I mentioned Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. He's the Mishnah later on. Mem Aleph. No, it's different. There's Rav Yehuda's and Amayra. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is a Tana. I mentioned earlier that machlekes Tanaim in yesh zika and zika is a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and we'll see. Meir and I didn't mention Meir and Gamliel yet, but it's a machlekes Tanaim. The Gemara's questions of why not just say the halacha is like, we got to know who they're talking about. So when the Gemara asked earlier, it said let Rav Huna say that the halacha is like the opinion of Old and Zika. Who's he talking about? He's talking about Rav Meir and Gamliel. When he's saying that, we're saying now that Rav Yehuda should say the halacha is like the man that holds Yesh Zika, like Rabbi Beseira. Meaning, and what's that case where the Tanaim argue? Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon dies. Reuven goes and marries Leah, and now we say, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, because he holds Yesh Zika, don't go finish the marriage off with Leah. Because if you finish the marriage off with Leah, then you're like having relations with your Yevama's sister, which is a problem. So therefore, don't do it until Levi does Yibam or Chalitza. But, so says the Gemara, if I would have just said that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, that there's Yesh Zika, I might think the Yesh Zika that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is talking about is where Rachel is alive. But when Rachel dies, I might think that with Rachel dying, the whole thing ends. And therefore, maybe I might think that Rachel's mother would be mutter even according to Rav Yehuda. So therefore, he had to say that the Zika is not Paka. This line here is where Baron Kotler says this idea. He says, Havi amina mechayim, abal la'achar misa Paka la Zika. I might have an avamina that just like Yibam and Chalitza take away the Zika, so too Rachel dying takes away the Zika, right? Mm-hmm. Kamash Malan, it doesn't. Kamash Malan, the Zika bechdi loy paka. We don't remove Zika just willy-nilly. The only way you remove a Zika is two ways. Yibum, Chalitza. Anything less than that, the Zika stays in force. So if Rachel dies while she's in Zika with Skuka, then she's like Anisha. Right. The mother is going to go ahead and be Asa forever, just like a woman's wife's mother is going to be, a guy's wife's mother is going to be Asa. Wow. That is the opinion of Rav Yehuda. Now the Gemara does the exact same thing it said before, except before we were asking Akasha. Now we're going to bring it as a raya, because this Mishnah of Yevimte Shemesa. Lema Messiah, I have a Mishnah that's going to be a raya to the opinion of Rav Yehuda that Yesh Zika. It says Yevimte Shemesa Mutter Ba'chosa. If Rachel dies, you're allowed to marry Leah, her sister, in a case of Yibum. So says the Gemara, what do you see Ba'chosa in? Ba'imala, you're not allowed to marry the mother, the same diak from earlier. Right, the Gemara says, because what do you say? And why wouldn't I be allowed to marry the mother? Maybe that's a riot to Rav Yehuda of Yesh Zika. The Gemara says no. Hua did afila b'ima, meaning it's going to be mutter. We'll push the raya. Why? Because we'll say that la'ilam, you could say that the Mishnah is not specifying sister because sister yes and mother not, but rather even the mother's mutter. Why? Because maybe you'll say ain Zika. Why did it specifically choose to talk about a sister? Same thing like we said before. V'aidi ditana reisha ishtai. Since the reisha was talking about an actual wife, shemesa. Then mutter ba'chosa, where it's dafka ba'chosa, it's only the sister that's mutter because of the unique halacha of achos ishtay. Aval be'imalai, the mother not. Why? Because the mother of your wife is always also due to havila isura deraisa of a regular erva. So too the Tananami seifa mutter ba'chosa, but lo'ilam there's no raya. Okay, so just very quick sikum. Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, very fundamental machlekes. Yesh Zika, Ein Zika. Yesh Zika, is it a quasi marriage or is it just Ein Zika, a regular marriage? The nafkaminas that we've seen so far are two classic nafkaminas. Nafkamina number one is, do we say that if Rachel, the Yevama, dies, her mother is forever usher to you? That's a machlekes. If you hold Yesh Zika, she's usher. If you hold Ein Zika, she's mutter. A second nafkamina is going to be Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon dies. Rachel falls to Reuven, but before Reuven does Ibum, Reuven marries Leah, Rachel's sister. And now all of a sudden, if you hold Yesh Zika, who is Leah? Leah, his wife, is also his other wife's sister. So he can't finish off the marriage until Levi goes ahead and does Ibum. That's only if you hold Yesh Zika. If you hold Ein Zika, then it's going to be mutter to just go ahead and finish off the marriage. So now the Gemara is just going to be addressing this opinion. Must have Rav Huna Bar Chia. Rav Huna Bar Chia says the following kasha on Rav Yehuda. There's a question on the opinion of Rav Yehuda who holds Yesh Zika. Our Mishnah. Asa ba maimer umeis. Shnia chayletes v'loy misyabemes. So let's just remember the case. We're talking about Eishes Ach Shaloi Hayu Ba'olama. Okay, so we're talking about Reuven and Shimon, our brothers who are alive at the same time. Levi has not been born yet. Shimon, the brother who is always dying, dies and leaves over a wife, Rachel. And Reuven is married to Dinah. So not sisters, just regular two wives. So now Reuven has a wife named Dinah and a Yevama named Rachel. Now, before Reuven does Yibum or Chalitza with Rachel, Levi's born. Levi and Rachel is an Erva relationship because Levi and Shimon were never born at the same time. Thank you very much. And therefore his wife is an Eishes Ach Shelo Yaveh. There's no can't. It's just a question of time. When I was a baby, I couldn't say it either. No, I'm serious. You learn over time, and eventually you're gonna.
I know. I gotta look.
You said shkoyach before. Shkoyach is that's it. Okay.
So what's the implication about
That's the regular case in the Mishnah.
Right.
Now it says in the Mishnah, what happens if instead of doing Yibum, Reuven does Maimer? Remember what Maimer is. Maimer is the Derabanan Kiddushin. Goes ahead and gives Kesef Kiddushin to Rachel. Well, now, Min HaTorah, he's only married to Dinah. But Min Derabanan, he's married to Dinah and Rachel. And since Min Derabanan, he's married to Dinah and Rachel, if Reuven were to die now, Levi, who has an Erva relationship with Rachel, because she's an Eishes Ach Shelo Ba'olamo, Midarabanan, Dinah is a Tzaras Erva. Midaraisa, Reuven was only married to Dinah. Midarabanan, he was both of them. So therefore, the Mishnah says Levi can't do Yibum with Dinah because Midarabanan, she's a Tzaras Erva. So therefore, Choletzes v'lo misyabemes. That's the Mishnah. Now, I'll say it out loud. That sounds like had he not done Maimer, let's say Reuven did nothing and died. That all that happened was he would have died while Shimon dies, Levi's born, and then Reuven dies. Right? So now that means that Levi could do Yibum with Dinah, right? No problem, because Reuven never did Maimer. But if you hold Yesh Zika, and Yesh Zika is a quasi-marriage, then the moment Shimon died, what was Rachel to Reuven? His quasi-wife. You accomplish a Kedushin Derabanan without Maimer. Follow that?
Yeah.
So that means if Reuven dies now, why do we say that he's allowed to do Yibum with Dinah? It should be a Tzaras Erva because it's already like Reuven is married to Rachel, who is an Erva to Levi. Does that make sense? Do I need to repeat that?
Repeat it once more.
Let's do it on the board.
See, this is the very
I try to push it as much as I can because it's good to flex the brain muscle, but we have three brothers. Reuven.
By the way, do you choose Reuven to live because of the pasuk?
No, I do it because
consistent.
he showed me the picture book had it, and although I have yet to use that picture book, I'm just maintaining consistency. Shimon's the one who seems to be always dying.
We should go back to the
But it makes sense that Reuven's the one that's living because of the pasuk.
Because now I'm looking.
Why?
I don't mind switching, but only if the oilam decides that it's okay to switch.
Yeah.
To me, it's one.
Switch myself.
We can talk about that. So you have Reuven and Shimon.
With Reuven, it says you should live.
The Rebbe might kill me.
What's the answer? You're using the answer.
Okay, no.
Okay, Reuven, Shimon,
Reuven,
maybe
Shimon, and
their
Levi.
brothers.
I'm going to cover up Levi for a second. Levi's not alive yet. Okay.
Okay.
Shimon is married to Rachel, and Reuven is married to Dinah. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
sisters, the girls.
No.
No.
Rachel and Leah are sisters. Dinah's.
Oh, yeah.
Dinah.
Right, yeah.
So Rachel. Okay. So Shimon now dies.
Okay.
Rachel is a Yevama with Reuven. Right.
Mhm.
Now we learned in the Mishnah that if, let's say, instead of doing Yibum, right? Let's say Reuven does. Well, here, let's just first. Levi's born. Levi's born after Shimon died. So
Yeah.
Levi and Shimon were never alive at the same time. Therefore, Rachel to Levi is an erva.
Fine.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Eishes Ach Shalei Hayu Ba'olama. The Ashba. The Ashba. Eishes Ach Shalei Hayu Ba'olama. It's the Ashba. Yeah. Okay. So that means Levi and Rachel cannot be together. So when Shimon dies, Rachel falls to Reuven. Someone's got to take care of this Zika relationship. He can either do Yibum or he can do Chalitza. But what's going to happen is, so we said in our mission the following: if he does Maimer, which is a Kedusha Derabanan, now it's like he's married to Rachel too.
Mm-hmm.
Derabanan. So now if Reuven is to die, Dina and Rachel fall to Levi. Problem is, Rachel's an erva, so she's a tsaras erva midirabanan. But min haTorah, it's like Rachel doesn't exist. Min haTorah, Reuven never married Rachel. Because all he did was Maimer. He didn't do Yibum or Chalitza.
And then he died.
And then he dies.
Got it.
So Reuven's dead. He's
He
leaving
never
over
finished
Dina.
off the whole marriage.
So that's what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says if Reuven did Maimer, Levi cannot do Yibum with Dina, must do Chalitza. Because this is only the Rabbanan, min haTorah, she still has a Zika relationship to Levi when Reuven dies. So therefore the Mishnah says he can only do Chalitza, not Yibum. The question the Gemara is about to ask is, that's still good. And question the Gemara is about to ask is as follows: if instead of doing Maimer, when Shimon died, right? If you hold Yesh Zika, the moment Shimon dies, what is Rachel? She is a Kuka. If you hold Ein Zika, that means nothing.
Yeah.
It just means that Rachel can't go marry someone else. But if you hold Yesh Zika is a quasi-marriage, meaning Midrabanan, we gave Rachel a status of Reuven's wife, well then, even without Maimer, Rachel is Midrabanan married to him. So when Reuven dies,
on this?
Dina is a Taras Erva Midrabanan. So,
Can we ask a prayer on this?
1 second. Before we do that, I want to make sure everyone understands the piece, right? Meaning, if you hold the H Zika, that means you hold that Reuven and Rachel are married the moment Shimon dies. The moment Shimon died, Rachel is a Zika to Reuven, and if you hold the H Zika, that's the equivalent of saying, it's basically the equivalent of Reuven having done Maimer. There's really no difference. Maimer is a Kedusha Derabanan, meaning you can almost effectively say that, forget this, you can almost ask, what is Maimer accomplishing according to the opinion who holds Yesh Zika? That's probably the smarter way to think about it. What's Maimer really doing? All it's doing is making it not inappropriate. But in terms of halacha, they're married before because of Yesh Zika. Maimer doesn't make the Kedushin anymore. It's just a Kedushin Derabanan. Right, so she's still, Dina is still Zukuka to Levi when Reuven dies, because on a total level, Dina and Reuven are 100% married, and when Reuven dies childless, the surviving brother, Levi and Reuven, live together at the same time. Dina has to do Yibum or Chalitza. So the Mishnah implies that if Reuven does not do Maimer, then Levi can do Yibum. According to the Mandam rules of Yesh Zika, he should never be able to do Yibum, because she will always be the tzara of Rachel midirabanan the moment Shimon died.
Like you said, it's the same thing.
Same thing. Maimer and Zika accomplish the same thing. Right. So the question, before you ask a pircha, the question the Gemara is going to be asking is, the Mishnah implies it's only true when you do Maimer. If you didn't do Maimer, let's say you didn't do Maimer, mashma, that this whole thing goes away.
Right.
And now what's Dina? Dina's a regular wife of a brother who died. Lady could do Yibum. That's what the Mishnah says. Now the Mishnah doesn't say do Yibum with her. It just says if you did Maimer, now the halacha is choletzes v'lo misyabemes. The implication is if you didn't do Maimer, do Yibum.
Right, so
According to the Mandam rules,
right,
you should never do Yibum.
Right.
You're always married to her midirabanan. That's the way the Gemara is going to ask it.
So I'm gonna ask. I'm not gonna ask a pircha now. I'm gonna say stronger. I'm gonna say that.
Not a pircha. You can ask a bumba. Okay, good.
Right. So now you can say that this case is going to be a raya to decide this Ein Zika. Why? Because otherwise,
that's the Gemara's doing.
Right. So
let the Gemara do it.
Right.
Let the Gemara do it.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to do it, by all means,
Okay.
We'll have Talmud Bavli, we'll have Talmud Yerushalmi, we'll have Talmud Aaron. Okay. So says the Gemara. Moshe Rav Huna bar Chia, our Mishnah, Asa ba Maimer, if let's say, in our case, Ruvain did Maimer with Rachel, Asa, Ruvain with Rachel, Maimer, Umeis, and Ruvain dies. Shnia, Dina, Choletzes v'lo misyabemes. Why? Taima the Ovid ba Maimer because he did Maimer. Mashma that haloy Ovid ba Maimer had he not done Maimer. Shnia Dina Nami Vumiyama could have gone ahead and done Yibum. Fred the Gemara asked the Gemara a question. V'i Amr's Yesh Zika, and if we say like you review who did that Yesh Zika, meaning that the Zika bond that exists between Rachel and Reuven is a marital bond, then what is Rachel to Ruvain, his quasi-wife? Then Dina and Rachel are tsaros. And Dina is going to be a tsaras erva, because Rachel is certainly an erva on Levi. Havila tsaras eishes hachav shlehoy ba'olama bezika.
So that Levi can't marry Dina.
Exactly.
It's out,
Right, but the Mishnah implies she can. Mishnah implies that if you did mimer, you can't. But if you didn't do mimer, then you can.
You can't, what you just said.
I know. That's the question of the Gemara. If you hold yesh zika, you can't. The Mishnah implies you can. The
That was
question of the
bothering
Gemara.
me 5 minutes ago.
Yes, so you're thinking like the Shita who holds yesh zika.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw the air of her.
Hey, Bill, what's up?
Ah, Mr. Bill.
Bill came to learn a little daf with us, right, Bill?
Yes, more than that.
There we go. Rabba. So Rabba answers. Nah. Rabba says the answer to this question is very simple. Who hadin? Says Rabba. There's no diak. You're right, correct. It says in the Mishnah, if you do mimer, only then can you only do chalitza, not yibam. But even if you didn't do mimer, he says you're right. The Mishnah holds yesh zika. Why did it tell me anything about mimer in the Mishnah then? Meaning, for the Gemara, meaning if you're telling me mimer doesn't make a difference, and no matter what, you can't do yibam, why mention mimer?
Yeah.
Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Because there's an opinion of mimer in the opposite direction. There's an opinion of mimer that mimer is menat Torah. Who is that? Beis Shammai. Says the Gemara, Lafukim de Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai holds that when a person does mimer, that's like mamish married. Now, he doesn't hold it's completely married, but he holds it's minhat Torah marriage.
Yeah, we don't go. We don't pass.
Well, we don't know, but we know we don't pass like Beis Shammai, but there's such an opinion. So the Mishnah mentions mimer to let me know that in that case, you still have to do chalitza. Because if it would be Beis Shammai, you wouldn't even have to do chalitza. Now let's work it through slowly before you ask. Right? If you hold it like Beis Shammai Shita, it means you hold that mimer is minhat Torah. Okay?
Not the Rabbanan.
Not the Rabbanan
More,
anymore.
it's higher.
So now, when Shimon dies and Reuven doesn't do mimer, then everyone would agree that Reuven's only married to Rachel and the Rabbanan, and you could only do chalitza, you can't do yibam. But if you would have held like Beis Shammai, at least in this question of mimer being minhat Torah, then when Shimon dies and Reuven does mimer with Rachel, Reuven is now married to Rachel, no different than he's married to Dina. Then Dina and Rachel are fully married to Reuven. Well, if Reuven dies now, this is a classic case of tzaras erva. What did it say in the Mishnah? When you have an erva, then erva is pater from yibam and chalitza. But tzaras erva is also pater from yibam and chalitza, meaning you might have thought that even chalitza you don't need. Right? Lafuki mit Beis Shammai da amri maimer koine kinyan gomer kamash malan, that it's not koine kinyan gomer, it's only koine derabanan, like a regular mimer. And since it's a regular mimer, you still got to do chalitza. But in chanami, even if you didn't do mimer, you can only do chalitza because of yesh zika.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually very fun once you actually start racking your head around it. Don't worry about it.
Hey, what are we going to do? Shabbos?
To
make it up on Shabbos?
So Beis Shammai says
It moves. We got to move.
Yeah.
It's shot oriented.
Shot oriented. Just
I'm gonna-
Beis Shammai says that since mimer is minhat Torah, so therefore what? Therefore
it's like Dina is married to Reuven and Rachel is married to Reuven. Because once Reuven did mimer is marriage.
But he didn't do mimer. He was only did.
No. The case in the Mishnah is he did mimer. When you do mimer, according to Beis Shammai, now Reuven's married to two ladies, 100%.
But our case that we were arguing about before is when he didn't do mimer.
Yes.
Then you'd be a zakuka. So
Yes.
why is that a raya for that case?
It's not that it's a raya. We're being docha the kasha. The kasha was, it says in the Mishnah, only when you do mimer do you not do yibam.
Yeah.
Mashma that if you didn't do mimer, you can do yibam.
Yeah.
Now we're saying, which is a kasha on the shita who holds yesh zika.
Yeah.
So the answer to the Gemara is no. La'olam, no matter whether you did mimer or not, you can never do yibam. Why? Because of zika. Why does the Mishnah even mention mimer to begin with? To tell us not like Beis Shammai, because Beis Shammai's opinion would tell us that you can't even do chalitza. You don't even need to do chalitza. That you're completely putter, because Dina and Rachel are both now married to Reuven. If Reuven dies, that's a tzaras erva.
Okay.
Now I will point out a good question, which is, if you hold like Beis Shammai, did we not learn that Beis Shammai holds that a tzaras erva is still chayav and yibam and chalitza? That's a good question. So the answer, of course, is that the Gemara does not mean to say that we would think that the halacha is like Beis Shammai and therefore in all areas. We would just be borrowing this one opinion of Beis Shammai. Right? You follow that? It's a simple answer. It's just
Why would you borrow one opinion?
Meaning to say there's an opinion of Beis Shammai in many different areas. You can hold like Beis Shammai in one and not like Beis Shammai in another. Meaning to say we clearly passing like Beis Hillel and Saras Ever, like we learned from the Masechta earlier. But the Havmin of the Gemara is that the Mishnah is coming to tell me that we don't pass like Beis Shammai when it comes to this sugi. And again, it's not even about passing like Beis Shammai. It could be that just that there's an opinion of Beis Shammai that maybe there are other Tanaim who hold up. Says the Gemara. Eisvei Abaye, another question on Reviewed. Shnei Achin be'olam echad. This is a case of two brothers, Reuven and Shimon, alive at the same time. Umeis echad mehen below Vlad, and Shimon dies with no children, and so that means his wife is falling to Reuven. The Amad Hasheni, and Reuven went ahead. Hazel aslis maimer biyavim toyrach. He wanted to do maimer. The Gemara is not going to address it here. Later on, where this Gemara is quoted from, we'll explain why it even told us this. But it's going to say v'lo hispik lasas b'maimer. So in the end, he didn't do maimer. So long way of saying he never did maimer. So Shimon died. Ad shenolod lo Levi is born. So this is the case of Eishtach Shloi Ba'olama. Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Shimon has a wife, Rachel. Shimon dies. Rachel falls to Reuven. He wanted to do maimer, didn't. Levi's born. So who's Rachel to Levi and Erva? Mamsh the case on the board. Yeah. Harishona Rachel Yaitza Mishum Eishes Achiv Shloi Ba'olama. That's consistent with everything we know. Rachel's an Erva. So therefore, Levi, when Reuven dies, is completely not responsible with Rachel because she's an Erva. Ushnia Dina, in our example, it's pretty straightforward here. Here we're saying you could even do Yibum. How could it be that you could do Yibum? According to the opinions who hold Yesh Zika, isn't Reuven married to Dina and Rachel? At least Midrabanan. It's Midrabanan, there's no Yibum. Why is it saying here in this Baraisa that you can do Chalitza or Yibum with Dina? It should only be Chalitza. I'm just going to speak it out now. It's exactly what I just said. So Gemara says, Hamani Rav Meir. Now we're introducing the actual Tanoim. Who is the opinion of that Brisa, that Mishnah later on? That's Rav Meir. Rav Meir is the opinion of holds the Amr Ein Zika. And that is the answer to that question. Says the Gemara, 1 second, you're telling me it's Rav Meir and Rav Meir holds Ein Zika? Fine, that question's gone. You're telling me it's Rav Meir. But is it true that Rav Meir holds Ein Zika? Rav Meir Ein Zika? I have a Mishnah, and it doesn't say Rav Meir in this Mishnah, but it's a Stam Mishnah. We assume Stam Mishnah is Rav Meir. Arba Achim Shnayim Mehen Nesuim Shtei Achiyos. Do you remember this case? It's a complicated case, but really not. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Reuven and Shimon are married to sisters. Reuven and Shimon die. So you have two other brothers who now are having two ladies fall to them and their sisters. So Levi and Yehuda both have Yibum with Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah are sisters. If you hold Yesh Zika, then aren't each one of them the sister of your wife? Right. Eshes Ish, or in this case, Eshes Kukaso. Right. It's our Achos Kukaso. Right. Meaning, Reuven and Shimon were married to sisters, and Reuven and Shimon die. Separately, each one of them have a Zika bond with Levi and Yehuda. Levi and Yehuda have a Zika bond with sisters. So that means Levi has a Zika bond with Rachel and with Leah, which means no matter which way you go, he's got a Zika bond, and then it's with a sister of a sister. Yeah, you get the idea. So says the Gemara. It says in the Mishnah later on, Arba Achim Shnai Mehen Nesum Shtei Achiyos. Umesu Hanesu and Achiyos and Reuven and Shimon die. It says over here, Hare Elu Choltos V'lo Misyabmos. Now, why is that true? Why is the halacha in this Stam Mishnah that it's Chalitza and not Yibum? You can only say that if you hold Yesh Zika. If you don't say Yesh Zika, then what's the problem? Why can't Reuven, Fred the Gemara, Visa Kadait Chasav Meir Ein Zika, Hanimi Trei Batika Asyan. These are two Rachel and Leah, two sisters, but two girls from two different homes. Let Levi be Miyabem Rachel, let Yehuda be Miyabem Leah. Shalom Yisrael. Why can't they do Yibum?
Wasn't it because if one of the other brothers died, then the other sister would fall to the other one in Yibum?
Yes, that's the Gemara's response. The Gemara says, Rameir is Choshesh L'miut. Says the Gemara, no. First, let's finish the question. Hai liyabim chada. Let Levi be with Rachel. V'hai and Yehuda liyabim chada Leah. And therefore, you see clearly that this Mishnah is predicated on Yesh Zikas. After you tell me Rameir is the opinion holds Ein Zika, this is not Mishnah. We know it's Rameir. We see clearly Rameir holds Yesh Zika. Gemara says no. Lo'ilam Ein Zika. Really, Rameir holds Ein Zika. Mishum the Kasava, Rameir holds also levatl mitzvahs Yibmin. Meaning what? Like what he said before. Meaning the Dilma ademiyabim chad ma'is idich. We're nervous that let's say we let Levi do Yibum with Rachel, right? So let's say we let that. So Levi does Yibum with Rachel, and now we were expecting Yehuda to do Yibum with Leah. What happens if Yehuda dies before he's able to do Yibum with Leah? Now all of a sudden Leah is going to fall to Levi. Problem is Levi's already married to Rachel's sister, Leah's sister Rachel.
Right.
And that's going to mean that Leah is now free. She's free to go, which means Leah, who had a mitzvah even because her husband died childless, and had you done chalitza, it would have been no problem. You would have had another chalitza. You could have been done mitzvah ibam. You're mevatel the mitzvah ibam if he dies. Now again, when we saw this idea earlier, that was a case where we're vadai going to be mevatel. If you say that you marry the mother while the daughter is alive, you ipso facto make the daughter not possible to do ibam.
Right.
Here we're saying Rav Meir is going to say, I'm choshesh that maybe the other brother will die, therefore you can't do ibam. You got to do chalitza. Right? I'm just pointing out that it's a unique opinion of Rav Meir. But La'olam Rav Meir is the one who holds Ein Zika. Rav Meir is the opinion. Ein Zika is the opinion of that Mishnah. So we know that there's Yehuda ben Beser, which hasn't been brought up in our Gemara. He holds Yesh Zika. Rav Meir holds Ein Zika. Says the Gemara. The Ein Zika.
I don't care, but you have to leave or you don't.
No. He's here. He's my 8:30. So as long as he is, when he starts giving me the eyes, then I know. Then I know. Right?
I
Do we have an extra maybe 10 minutes or so? Yeah. Okay. The I just want to get a little bit on my base. The Ein Zika. Okay, 1 second. So we just said that Rav Meir holds Ein Zika, and because he holds Ein Zika, he'll also hold. You're also not supposed to be mevatel Yevamos, and therefore we don't want to let if Levi does Yibum, it'll come out that we're nervous. If Yehuda dies, all of a sudden Leah, let's say, who's supposed to now fall to Levi, won't be able to do it because Levi's already married to Rachel, her sister. Okay. So therefore, if we make them both do chalitza, you're not mevatel it, because no matter what happens, even if Yehuda dies, you could do chalitza with the second wife.
Right.
No problem, and everyone's not mevatel in mitzvah. Says the Gemara, what's the big deal? Say it's batel. Meaning, who says you can't say this? I'll prove to you. I'll bring you an opinion who holds Ein Zika, and that opinion holds Ein Zika, and you can be mevatel the mitzvah.
Okay.
Says the Gemara, the Harab Gamliel, Amar Ein Zika, he holds Ein Zika. Mutter levatel mitzvah Yevamin. Now it's a very strange question. Gemara is going to answer this. Gemara is going to answer it this way. Who said that's one opinion? Yeah, that's Rabbi Gamliel. He holds this way. Rabbi Meir doesn't hold like that. Says the Gemara like this. The Tanan. What's the case of Rabbi Gamliel? Rabbi Gamliel Omer. What's the case? Imiyana v'imloi miyana tamtem shetagdol. So let me just. No. 1 second. Slowly.
What's the case?
The case is like this. You have Reuven and Shimon. We'll say Reuven is married to Dina, and Dina is a gedola, regular normal wife. He's married to Dina, regular Shalom al Yisrael, very good. Reuven's married to Dina.
Yeah.
And
Reuven dies.
And before Reuven dies, let's do this. Let's say now. So Shimon. Yeah. No. Start again. I'm sorry. Shimon is married to Dina. Dina's a gedola.
Shimon's married to Dina.
Is it opposite from over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Reuven's married to Dina because that's what's on the board.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Reuven's married to Dina. Dina is a gedola. She's an adult. It's a full marriage. Shimon is married to a girl named Rachel, and Rachel is 10 years old. Her father died, and her mother or brother married her off. They're only married midrabanan.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if, in this case, Shimon's not dying? In this case, because I swapped it, Reuven's going to die.
Right.
Okay, so Reuven dies. That means Dina now falls to Yibum to Shimon. Now, problem is on a Torah level, no problem. Go do Yibum. On a Derabanan level, he's married to Rachel. Did I say that right?
Yes.
He's married to Rachel. So Midrabanan, well, Rachel is
sister, right?
No, not a sister. She's
the katana though.
1 second. 1 second.
Midrabana, he's married to Rachel.
How?
Because she's only 10.
No,
yes.
How
I'm
was
sorry.
he married at all?
I shouldn't have called her Dina. It's Rachel and Leah. My bad.
Even in the CV,
because it's
Zika.
Let's go back.
Zika by someone that doesn't have that.
We built the wrong foundation. Let's start again. Yes, the sister. Let's start again. Okay.
Wait. Come cows down.
I know.
But Leah. Go.
Yeah, that's it. Just change Dina for Leah.
Okay, Rachel and Leah.
Put Leah. Cow.
This marker. Go black. I'm not there. Thank you.
Okay.
One maybe. Never mind.
Right, Rachel and Leah sisters, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So what are we talking about over here? This case is okay. So Shimon is married to Rachel. Rachel is a ketana. So Shimon's only married to the ketana midrabana.
Yeah.
Whereas Reuven is married to Leah 100%, no questions asked. So Rachel's a ketana. Rachel bitcha ketana. Yeah. So we have like this. What happens now if Reuven dies, and now Shimon's wife's sister is falling to him. Leah is
It's
falling to him.
Erva, we know that
Oh,
already.
but it's only midarabana because Shimon is not really married to Rachel min Torah.
Wait, but even if it wasn't, even if it is derabanan, the surviving, meaning if Rachel and Leah are sisters, I don't care if she's 10, I don't care if she's 13.
It's marriage midarabana. Min Torah, it's not an erva.
But he's already married to his sister,
Doesn't
and you
matter.
can't have two sisters.
Who's dying in your head right now?
Either brother could die.
So the case I'm giving you specifically in this case is Reuven dying.
Okay, Reuven
if Reuven dies,
Reuven
Time
dies.
out, slowly. Let's go step by step.
Yeah.
Trust me. If Reuven dies, does Shimon have a responsibility to do yibum with Reuven's wife?
Oh.
There you go.
Now
Okay.
I thought.
So Reuven dies. Reuven's wife is a Yevamos. Shimon has a mitzvah to do yibum. If Shimon has a mitzvah to do yibum, problem is he's midrabanan married to her sister already.
Correct.
So min Torah, he has a yibum responsibility. Midrabanan, she's a tzaras erva, not a tzaras erva. She's an erva. This is his wife's sister. It's an erva. So what is he supposed to do?
Right. What's supposed to do?
Says Rav Gamliel. Wait, if Rachel does miyun, then that retroactively makes that whole marriage go away. Then now Leah is no longer an erva, right? If Rachel does miyun, meaning she says, I'm not interested in staying married to you, right? That retroactively makes it that they were never married.
Right. Right.
That's miyun. That's it. So that means even if they're no erva. And if she doesn't, this is the line. And if she doesn't, Rav Gamliel says the following. I'll read it inside.
Yeah.
In miyana. She did miyana. Great, you're good to go. Go ahead, and now you could do yibum with Leah in this case, right? Im lo miyana, and if let's say Rachel says no, I like Shimon. He seems like a really nice guy. I think I'm going to stick around. It says over here, tamtin ad shetagdil. Wait around until Rachel becomes bas mitzvah. But teitze halzu mishum achos isha, meaning, and go consummate your marriage with the girl who just became 12. Now you're fully married to Leah. Rachel, sorry. That comes in my head.
And then it's
And now, okay, so now she gets to go free. Now she gets to go free. Because you're married to... Wait.
Why in her Torah are they not married?
Who and who?
Married her off.
No, the mother or the brother married her off. Miyun. We're talking about that specific case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
It's only a marriage with the Rabbanan. When the father marries it off, it's
Leah's
the
status during this whole interim period.
Rabbanan married to Shimon.
The father.
The Rabbanan married to Shimon.
Yeah.
Right. Midoraisa,
That's just
She's a girl.
a lot of it.
she can go and marry somebody else in the Chal or not?
It's certainly chal, because it's only this the Rabbanan, but definitely also with the Rabbanan.
Wait,
Yeah.
how could it even be chal? She doesn't have das.
Different discussion. It's a good question. It's a big sugya later on.
Okay.
The katana, how does it work? And why is it only the Rabbanan?
Right.
Okay. So this is the case. So go ahead. Rabbi Gamliel, what's Rabbi Gamliel saying? Rabbi Gamliel is saying, wait until she gets older. She'll have not done miyun. You're allowed to marry. You consummate the marriage with Rachel. Shimon and Rachel are now fully married, and now all of a sudden Shimon can't do yibum with Leah because he's married to her sister. So what happens to Leah now? She goes free. This is Rabbi Gamliel's suggestion. You see two things from here. You see clearly he holds Ein Zika. Why does he hold Ein Zika? Because if he held Yesh Zika, the moment that Ruvain died, Leah would already be quasi-married to him. He would not allow the consummation of the marriage with Rachel, because already there's a Zika relationship with Leah. So he must hold Ein Zika, because otherwise he would not allow him to consummate the marriage with the 12-year-old as she becomes a Gedolah. That's the first thing you see. And the second thing you see is from the fact that he says that once she becomes 12 and he consummates the marriage, and now Leah gets to go free, he's mevatel that mitzvah yibum. So the Gemara is bothered. The Gemara is asking, Reb Meir, we just said 2 seconds ago, he holds Ein Zika. But if that's the case, we had a question. It can't be that he holds Ein Zika because we saw a case. Right, we saw a case where he seems to imply that Yesh Zika. The Gemara says no. He holds Ein Zika. And the reason why in that case over there, without getting back into it, where it was the case where, we'll get back into it, it was the two brothers, Levi and Yehuda. Why is that halacha that it's cholzus v'lo Yevamos if he holds Ein Zika? The answer is because if you allow one to do yibum, then you could potentially be mevatel the other one. Now we're proving that the opinion who holds Ein Zika can hold that you could be mevatel yibum, because you see Rabbi Gamliel did that. Gemara says, I don't understand. What's the question? Says the Gemara, Amar le the Rabbi Gamliel ad Reb Meir karamas. You're asking me a kasha on Reb Meir from the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel? Maybe Rabbi Gamliel holds you can be Mavatal, and Rabbi Meir holds you can't be Mavatal. Right? So Gemara says, Loi, Hachi Kabir. This is what I was asking. Can it possibly be that they argue so far? Rabbi Gamliel says you can be Mavatal, even in a case where you're for sure going to be Mavatal. Because he says you can, on your own, be a daim, go ahead and be Machnis Rachel. And you know for sure Leah is going to go free. Rav Meir is saying you can't. Not only can you not do it here, you can't even do it in a scenario where it's probably not going to happen. What's the concern? Maybe the other brother will die. The Gemara is asking it more like, how could it be that Rabbi Gamliel says we'll be Mavatal in a case of Vadai, and Rav Meir is going to say we're not going to be Mavatal even in a case of Safek? Rav Meir Chayesh afilu l'sveika, Rav Gamliel afilu levadai lo'chayesh. That can't be. The Gemara says no. You can. Dilma man de lo'chayesh afilu levadai lo'chayesh. Maybe Rabbi Gamliel, who is not chayesh, meaning to say Mavatal doesn't care. Uman de chayesh, Rav Meir who cares afilu l'sveika chayesh. Okay. What comes out from over here basically is Rav Meir holds Ein Zika, like the opinion of Rav Huna. Says Amar le Abaye, the opinion of Rav Yehuda, who holds Yesh Zika. Amar le Abaye le Rav Yosef, had the Rav Yehuda of Yesh Zika the Shmuel. He's saying the same opinion of Shmuel. What's the opinion of Shmuel? And now we're going to bring in Rav Yehuda ben Beseira from before, which is why it was good that I brought it up. Shemeris Yavim Shekidash Achav Esachaisa. So you thought Daf Tes was tough.
Wait, who are you going to? How far are you going to?
We'll go to here. We're gonna full by. Maybe we'll have to find. We'll have to find the day. Maybe we'll do a Sunday thing.
Good job.
Okay, it's gonna become a Yevamos. It's gonna become a Yevamos theme.
What about Shabbos? Mincha
No. Rabbi Lowe is back first of all. Rabbi Lowe is back, so I'm assuming he's gonna start giving his shiur before Mincha. Right, so that's not possible. And Mincha Maariv, between Mincha Maariv, you have Shal Shudus, you have the rabbi speaking, you have David speaking. Doesn't work. I think it's. I mean, if you and I want to sit on this fine, and we can talk a little bit learning.
We should change the whole Shal Shudus.
No, Shal Shudus is wonderful. Okay, so let's just finish a little bit of here. So what's the case? Says the Gemara, Amalei Abaye le Rav Yosef. Ha, the Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, when Rav Yehuda says, no.
Just tell me where you're getting up to, so I know what to do.
I'll go to here.
We're
And
here.
then we gotta go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 lines down. We'll get to Amar of Kahana. Amalei Abaye le Rav Yosef. Had Rav Yehuda that holds the Zika is the Shmueli.
You're speaking to yourself now.
I'm breaking that.
You that? All right. So we'll pick up from here.
My brain shut off.
We'll pick up from here.
My brain stopped. It does.